How can you raise your vibration in the midst of chaos? That's today's question. Hi, it's Dr. Mary, and we are continuing our series about awakening your inner goddess and really becoming reconnected in with your intuition. So last week I talked about some of the signs and symptoms that you may be disconnected from your inner goddess. So we talked about anxiety, depression, using food as a coping mechanism, having physical issues that seem to be maybe known or unknown to you, wake-up calls, that universe is trying to tell you something. So I think today's question comes at a really appropriate time, because today we're going to start talking about my 6 steps to really reawaken your inner goddess. And the first step is to acknowledge what brought you to this point in your life. I get that you may be going through some pretty rough times right now, or you may have gone through a pretty rough journey. So today I've talked with a client who has had a lot of surgeries for a cleft lip and cleft palate, and she was wondering, how can I get over that? We were talking about it in terms of body love and body image, and I actually answered her question on this week's podcast. But I want to use her example today to also talk about surgeries and physical and psychological symptoms as signs that, hey, you need to wake up, you need to pay attention. So to really awaken your inner goddess, step 1 is to acknowledge what brought you to this point. So I believe, and one of my life mantras is that life happens for us, not to us. So when things happen that take you off your game, that make you feel disconnected, like you're living somebody else's life, anxiety, depression about something that's happening in your world, when things happen to you that are totally out of your control. I'm not even talking about fights with your spouse or things that happen that you can see why and how they happen. I'm talking about world events or life happening in a way that you could not have ever anticipated. Losing a loved one, getting a divorce, things like that, where you just really feel like you're taken off your game and you may or may not have seen it coming. So even in those events, I want you to be able to look at everything that happens for you, as negative and as awful and as horrible as it may seem, and ask yourself this question: why did this happen for me? Not to me, but for me. Everything happens for a reason. You have to acknowledge what brought you to this point in your life. Not with a victim mode, not with a blame or shame mindset, but so you can learn the lesson. Because if you don't see and acknowledge that lesson and start to take steps to learn it, it's going to keep happening in some way, shape, or form. Take it from me. It took me 40 years to realize what the universe had been trying to tell me for 40 years. And the wake-up calls, cosmic 2x4s is my favorite terminology. I borrowed that from my friend and mentor, Linda Joy. Universe will start with gentle whispers and nudges. When you don't pay attention to that, you get hit with the brick. When you don't pay attention to that, you get nailed with the cosmic 2x4. You're going to keep getting the same lesson in some variety until you acknowledge it, bring awareness to why it's happening for you, and take steps to deal with it. So, question number 1. When things take you off your game, big or small, expected or unexpected, ask yourself, why did this happen for me? If it's been surgeries, if it's a physical chest pains, stroke, something like that, why did this happen for me? Big or small, whatever it may be. Number 2, what's the lesson here? What am I supposed to learn? I had a client a few months ago who came to me in the midst of a physical meltdown. She started having chest pains, and they were not getting any better. She'd been to see cardiologists. They couldn't find anything wrong with her. And so finally, out of desperation, she came to me, a psychologist. And she's like, I can't figure this out. My doctors keep telling me there's nothing wrong with my heart. It must be psychosomatic. And I just reframed the question. And I said, why is your heart breaking? That was the aha she needed. I didn't need to tell her why her heart was breaking or why she was having chest pains. Once she realized that she could ask herself that question, immediately she knew the answer. She was going through a really rough time in her marriage. She was thinking about getting a divorce. Her husband of 20 plus years, and she were thinking of ending things, and that was breaking her heart because she had poured so much of her time, effort, soul, longing, desire into this relationship, and it was on the verge of failing. That's why she was having chest pains. So why is this happening for me? What's the lesson here that I need to learn? In her case, it was happening for her because that was her body's way of saying, hey, pay attention. Your relationship is in shambles. You're not taking care of yourself. You are so stressed out about this. And the lesson for her was really about getting in touch with what her heart wanted her to do. Now, she and her husband did work things out, and now they're to have a better relationship than they've had in decades. But it took some doing. And it took her having that meltdown, her body literally telling her in the most noisy way possible with really bad chest pains for months that something was awry for her to pay attention. So why is this happening for me? What lesson do I need to learn? What am I going to do about it? Now, this may be something that you cannot directly control. In her case, she and her husband went and got couples therapy. They worked things out. They both made some changes. Now they're doing a lot better. What if it's something that you can't directly control? So the client I was talking to this morning had 25 surgeries for a cleft lip. She's now in her mid-20s. And all through grade school, all through childhood, and even into high school, she was made fun of for all the surgeries she had to have, for having the cleft lip in the first place. Those were things that really, those were external circumstances, right? She did not want to have a cleft lip. She didn't want to have 25 surgeries. She didn't want to be made fun of. So those were things that were clearly nothing she had done wrong to provoke those things happening. So we had to look at the bigger picture. Why is this happening for me? And what we worked out in our time together was that those things needed to happen for her, because that was the universe's way of ultimately showing her how strong and how brave and how courageous she was, and giving her the courage when she got into college. She just graduated, got into college and went through her degree program and came out on the other side with more confidence and more belief in herself than she had ever had in her life. Because in college, she finally learned that she was not her cleft palate. She was not her 25 surgeries. She was gifted. She had skills. She had come to me because she was in a moment of self-doubt where she was trying to make a career decision about what job to take post-college, and the memories of being teased and taunted all throughout her K through 12 schooling were still haunting her. And she was kind of doubting her own skills and abilities to go out there and land this big job she'd been offered and do it well. And what I said to her is, why did this happen for you? What was the lesson? And what she realized was that the lesson was if she could get through 25 surgeries in about as many years, she could do just about anything. And so to think she couldn't take this big leadership role at her young age in this corporation that was being offered to her immediately after she graduated was ludicrous. She absolutely had the skill set. And maybe a lot of people her age don't have those experiences and didn't have that skill set. But because of everything she went through, she absolutely could do it. Because if you've been through something like that, 25 surgeries in as many years, you know, bring it, because pretty much nothing's going to knock you off your game. And that's what in our session together, that's what she kind of figured out. So acknowledge what brought you to this point. Why is this happening for me? What's the lesson to be learned here? What am I going to do about it? So that gets back to our initial question that started us today. How do you raise your vibration? First thing you need to do is ask yourself those questions and really get some clarity on why whatever it is that's making you in that mucky, low, negative energy is happening for you. Because just getting the answers to those questions will often solve the problem and raise your vibration. If you find that it doesn't, or if you find that you're feeling so low and feeling so down in the muck that answering those questions isn't getting you anywhere, flip-flop it. Do something that's going to raise your vibration first. Then when you're feeling a little better, go back and ask those 3 questions for yourself. So what can you do to raise your energy or raise your vibration? Do something you love to do. When you're in a low place, I have a friend named Stacey Martino, and she calls it the 50% rule. But her point is, think of yourself like a fuel tank, like your car's fuel tank. If you're below 50%, especially like if you're below 25%, you need to kind of be thinking about where you're going to get gas, right? So you need to be focused on not running out of fuel. So if you're below 50%, your job is to put gas in your car, right? Raise your vibration to the point that you are feeling like, I'm not going to run out of gas anytime soon. I can do this. So to raise your vibration, I encourage you to make a list of 10 to 12 things that you love, love, love to do. And then next time you're feeling down in the muck and low and depressed and anxious and icky, pull that list out and start doing things on that list until you feel better, until you're above 50%. Now, again, for you, the magic number may be 80%, it may be 25%, it may be 70%. You know you best. But get to the point where you feel like you again, then go back and ask yourself those questions. Because again, life's going to keep happening for you until you learn your lesson. So it does not behoove you to ignore it. So raise your vibration by doing something that brings you joy. Go through those questions to raise your vibration further, because getting clarity is going to make it feel not so bad. You're getting rid of the fear and the anxiety about that situation. And then move forward with your day and your life. So this is Dr. Mary. That was step 1 in how to awaken your inner goddess. Acknowledge what brought you to this point. Next week, we're going to come back with step 2 and continue on our journey to really reconnect in with you and reawaken your inner goddess.